where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
I want you to imagine that you're responsible for hooking up electricity for this community of people in South Africa, and this is the first time they're gonna have electricity, but you notice that your boss is giving you directions, and he's directing you to reroute the electricity from the security lights used to surveil these people into a system that now provides electricity for this community. So today we'll be discussing infrastructure and the Renaissance, and we'll be citing really the promise of infrastructure by Nikhil, Anand, Akhil, Gupta, and Appel. I hope I'm saying that right. In terms of why I sound like this, I'm also kind of like a little bit under the weather, but it's all right. Now, this particular book, this was really a series of essay or a series of, I guess, research papers, and just different situations and highlighting different situations within those research papers. So there's obviously a focus on whatever the topic of that paper may be, but it all revolves around infrastructure. And in terms of reference, I also have plenty of thoughts. This really helped shaped my personal thoughts and opinions, or my personal thoughts about how to really move forward, and the in terms of the building and the infrastructure surrounding the foundry proposal. For those that don't know, I have a background in just building in general, and also engineering as well. An interest in engineering, not a professional or a certification of any kind, but it deeply interests me. So this had there was some pretty striking pretty striking situations, I'll say, in this particular book. And now this idea of studying infrastructure, I think one of the main things is it tells us a lot about society, right? And this idea of infrastructure, we kind of take it for granted in so many different ways, and that's really because it's because it's doing its job in a lot of situations. When it comes down to like not really, well, when you understand when you understand infrastructure in terms of the person who isn't necessarily tasked to operate infrastructure, it's usually because there's something wrong and we have to fix it. And usually when it's out of sight, and it's out of mind, it's working best. Crazy analogy. The infrastructure, or the engineers that kind of work on infrastructure, they can, when it's working perfectly, these people are somewhat analogous to occultists, and the kind of the really just how they're the they're able to influence the kind of I guess the world of the unseen in a way, and that was pretty striking in terms of that analogy, and that's I mean, there's a lot to say about that in general, but that's pretty in terms of the way we think about these people and how we really understand these people. It does give one a sense of understanding about, the thought, a more powerful thought process behind the work that they do in general. Another interesting idea was, one second. Another interesting idea was this idea of infrastructure and how they kind of tell us about society. When it comes down to the nuts and bolts of things, a lot of projects are, it's really a promise that really is being made to the general populace. And a lot of times you'll find, outside of, quote-unquote first world societies, we'll find situations where there are mixed-use projects, or there's projects that just don't get finished, and they have a lot of piecing together of projects and how they're pieced together. And just in kind of noticing that, it tells a story, and it's something that could be very, very important in terms of understanding how society works, right? Now, in the beginning, right? So we talked, or in the intro story, we talked about how security lights or surveillance lights were rerouted to provide electricity to homes, and that was one very, very very stark example. But another one is in terms of a lot of when it comes down to really incentivizing people to build infrastructure. There's a lot of exploitation that goes on, right? So in terms of what, when it comes down to a country taking another country, and or a country colonizing another country, that is very, very much like it becomes the primary motivator for developing, quote unquote, developing the society. And that was something, the limitations and the patterns around, hooking electricity up from security, from surveillance poles. That's, that you could imagine how that would shape and structure a society. But also, like, when it came down to, like, a lot of these countries, it was I want to say Walter Rodney said in his book, how this idea of development, in Africa was really, the roads all led to the sea. There was no interconnection. There was no trying to really bridge together people in different countries. There was, how can we best build roads to extract raw minerals or resources from this place. And that is it's really how we see a lot in terms of what goes on in these places. And a lot of these places, like, they're not they'll get one thing that I wouldn't be surprised. I won't say this because I haven't read it in general, or I haven't like really been exposed to it. But it wouldn't surprise me if these places are developing infrastructure with, materials that are foreign. So the idea is when it comes down to maintenance and really like it sets up a system of reliance on wherever you get these materials from and however these materials come about, in terms of like actually developing their lands or developing that particular infrastructure more organically. You may see different materials used in a lot of different situations, and that's most certainly more preferable to kind of resources coming in from the outside, and kind of creating this system of reliance, based on just based on the prevailing entities that may exist right now. Now, many of these countries, there's a situation to where they want to make sure that the leadership is really accepting of, in many cases, the colonial country, or the country that's really extracting resources, and that's no surprise. But when it comes down to like kind of how how we select for people, I do think it's important to mention how like the people who kind of rule in a lot of situations, they are not there because they are the best in a lot of situations. They're not there because they are the most noble or the most fit to be in those positions. They're there because a lot of times because they can be controlled. And I think we're seeing this a lot with of course our politicians in the United States, but also when it comes down to like people abroad, that situation becomes even that selective force becomes more powerful. And we could kind of get an understanding of what goes on here, but it's important to understand these people are still wearing the mask of civility when they're able to come up here, and a lot of times that's not the case abroad. And of course, like when you have like they will utilize violence when need be, and subject these people, and it's it's very dark. It could get very dark very fast. And in any case, when it comes down to like these people who are in control, in some cases, the bribery was pretty much a line item in the cost of infrastructure. Like oh, it's so insane. But like this is when it comes down to the cost, bribery could have literally been in the line item. Like, how much do we have to pay these people off? And that is, it's kind of the way you play the game in terms of the way the game is played right now. When you're looking for people that are easily controllable, usually those people don't have the morals to do anything besides what they've kind of been doing, and a lot of times that is bribery. Um, and when it comes down to this idea of, the infrastructure, you know, we talked about how, the incentive is how can we exploit this place for whatever resources. And it's important to realize that this idea of economics and infrastructure, they go hand in hand. And there is, it's essentially like you see chaos as a result abroad, and that is not in any, like, that's not in any case what we'd really like to spread. So in terms of like thinking about how we interact with countries, period, I think it's very important that we understand that idea of like fixing and repairing, our own society, of course, but just the idea of kind of the chaos that we kind of subject other countries to is something that we most certainly need to understand. Now, this idea of infrastructure and understanding, right? So, I have here written down, infrastructure and politics go hand in hand. And the idea is infrastructure is, it's understood right now by, how we utilize, or how this place is utilized for the people who are providing the resources to build upon this place. And we should, definitely understand the idea of, organic infrastructures being, able to grow and facilitating that. And that right there would be essentially how to best utilize this land. There was some cases in, I think it was in Brazil, I want to say it was in Brazil, where, they were trying to, like, it came to be to where, like, there was, like, a lot of talk about, how do we build a road here? And the people were already using the river to travel. And that is, in terms of the transformation, when you think about organic growth, you may think about how do we kind of improve upon this travel, or more formalize this particular area of travel if we want to do that, and how do we where could things go wrong with this idea of travel by boat, and kind of build and design around what is existing, rather than kind of assume that our infrastructure that we want to impose is the only way that this idea of more infrastructure will take place in this in this particular location. And in terms of there's obviously going to be a cost here, right? So, like, the idea of, like, this isn't the mindset of kind of exploitation being a primary motivator. That's this is naturally going to say, okay, cool, well, we don't want certain, we want to do this as efficient as possible when it comes down to how we our technology works. And it's not gonna necessarily be that, right? The idea of infrastructure right now is like, another thing is just the idea of infrastructure being built successfully in terms of it actually is installed, but it is still a failure because it is not used how it, how the people who are, in control of the project may intend, right? And this is directly linked to understanding, kind of building that understanding and that foundation of understanding first before infrastructure even comes into play. And I think this is like, when it comes down to, I think there was like a stretch of road that wasn't used, or a kind of a connection point between roads that wasn't used, and it was like a situation to where the neighboring people didn't necessarily like each other, so there was no use of this road, or they didn't want to interact with each other, and there was no use of this road, and it was kind of seen as a connection point, and there was like the level of understanding, that it took, or the level of understanding that was lacking when it came down to expending resources to build this road is astounding, right? Like, that is, I mean, in terms of like, how infrastructure is used and how it will be used, that is dependent upon the people that live there and what they do or want to do. Now, one thing that they do have, there's even meetings. The most famous meeting, of course, being kind of the cutting up of Africa, I think. But also they have meetings about how to best exploit countries, and it is, I mean, it's insane. But these people get together and they say, well, let's do this and let's do that, and there are development projects that come right after that. And it is, I mean, I imagine those meetings, there are no people in those places, or there's no people that actually live in these places a part of the meetings. It's just like literal, like I imagine like oil conglomerates, or like people who are like into the mining industry, just deciding, hey, this is what we can do best. And it can easily turn into a catastrophe for the people actually on the ground, and that's not a consideration in a lot of these meetings, and it's insane. And this idea of, when infrastructure grows organically, I have here, infrastructure is made best when it's viewed as something that is evolving over time. The infrastructure and the evolution of infrastructure is going to happen. Is going to happen along with kind of the people, when you have that organic nature of infrastructure, right? So, in terms of, when it came down to, I think we talked about, I think it was Brazil, I'm not sure exactly, but where they had rivers and they were using rivers for travel instead of road. That is, you could imagine when it came down to, okay, more people live here, maybe let's see about kind of an underwater pass, or highway or something like that, which is, it might be a dumb idea, but maybe the ideas that come about are going to be more natural in terms of what you have on hand, and it's going to be something that you know that's going to serve whatever is happening in that area. And they may at some point decide like, hey, look, let's try to import some plastic, or import, whatever. But it'll be a decision that's made based on what is there, and that'll be much more organic than, simply, oh, we have more people, well, let's do what the Americans do and simply just build the road, or just, expand the roads. And, it's definitely something that is, something that you want to evolve over time, but something that you want to evolve without necessarily reliance on you in your particular area or locate. Like whatever the resources that you can provide, it should be reliant on what's readily available there. Now, this idea was a shift that took place for me. Was reading them. It was somebody. This was. I'm embarrassed that I don't know who said this exactly, because it's probably some kind of like prophet that said this. But he said, modern society, or infrastructure is the church of modern society, right? And that transformation in thought, right? So like that transformation in thought was it's something that is reminiscent. It makes me think about for instance, when they had I believe was it basilicas? I don't know, but the idea of like towns were built, but I think the church was the highest, and it had the in terms of overlooking everyone. There was like I think on the very peak of the actual structure was a cross, and that right there was like it's something, because it's just like wherever you're at, whenever you're making a deal, you can always look up and kind of be reminded like of your religion or your faith, and kind of it brings you back to a point of, okay, let me, it structures society in a way that is definitely more it structures society for the people to live more according to. I won't say it does. It can easily structure society to where the people will act according to whatever values that they express, and that is something that is. When you think about building roads, and it's maybe it's not all about travel. Going back to this idea of engineers really being kind of the occultist. Maybe it's not all about travel. Maybe it's not all about how to best get resources from X location to Y location. Maybe there is something that we should be thinking deeper about when we design infrastructure, and that's something that a lot of people, like we see remnants of this. I think we still see remnants of this. Of course, in different societies, we'll see like I think it is in I want to say in the capital of Brazil, Rio, or something like that, to where they have like there's like a statue that's on like the highest mountain peak or something like that. And the of course, when it came down to, I think it was roads, and either maybe it was roads somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where. It's probably in Europe, but I don't know exactly where, like it's, all of the roads are, there's a centerpiece for all the roads, and that centerpiece is, I think, either the Capitol Hall or something. But how do we build on this plane of really having respect for the world of the unseen as well? I think is something that we should really consider when we think about infrastructure and the job of infrastructure and how it can influence people as well, outside of simply economically, or how to efficiency in terms of time. It does add another dimension to this idea of infrastructure. This idea of also, it's also brought up where there was a smokestack that was there was a situation where someone kind of created an analogy between a smokestack and an incense stick, and that was like, it's crazy, but like it was like thinking about this is pretty. Just I already have an interest in building in general, but that does kind of like I think it does create a more I would say a more powerful outlook on the effect of infrastructure and how towns and cities should be built. Now, there was also the situation in Vietnam where there was a bridge. There was a bridge that the Americans, they were trying to destroy this bridge, but it brought people the Americans failed, and it brought like a sense of pride in Vietnam over this bridge, and what it symbolized, and people kind of came together, and it really strengthened people in general. Also, it kind of symbolized, the sacrifices, that were made for this particular bridge, right? So, you think about the element of, we may plant a tree today, but we may not, live to see it grow tomorrow, or it grow to adulthood at any point. And that was, it's very much a testament to how much, to this idea of the everlasting, the echo, that we really establish with this idea of an infrastructure in a particular place. And this is also the element of infrastructure in the same place in South Africa where they have electricity this community got electricity that originated from surveillance lights. These people, there was a kind of a there's a lot to really there was a lot around South Africa in general, but one of the main protests was a primary protest in South Africa was disinstalling water meters, and like kind of just bringing like just piling up the water meters in a location. And I mean, I think it was in the middle of City Hall or something like that. It was pretty cool. A lot of these guys just got together and just like, they're not it's quote unquote illegal to take these water meters off, but everybody did it. And it's kind of, it was really cool to see that. But also like when there's like some kind of like real, there was like, they also had like protests to where in front of the city hall they would like if there was like some kind of backup or something like that, people would sling like their sewage like in that around the city hall. And I think that's very, very like very powerful stuff, coming together to do something like that. And I think it had a real influence, or it seemed to have a real influence on how they got things done in Africa. Now, another interesting case, like outside of Africa, was Mumbai, right? And this place is, it's known as the city of water, right? And the idea is it is like when it comes around the water infrastructure, it brought a lot of people together, and it brought in terms of like understanding like just a situation was where like somebody having a problem with water walking down the street towards the Capitol Hall, and it's just like everybody kind of like gathers around them and walks with them. It's just like, all right, we got a problem. And at some point it's just like, okay, well, this needs to be fixed. I think it became something to where the idea of like you seen like they protested the privatization of water at some point, and successfully like made sure that it stayed within the state control, and it brought people together across like classes, like what happened, or it made sure to connect people across classes. And that was something that was very, very interesting, because like another thing is how building infrastructure sometimes, rather than connect people, can really decidedly separate them, right? So of course, in the case of South Africa, you got these security lights, but also in other cases you have situations to where like somebody may get let's say this, I didn't read this particular instance, but it was just like the concept of being able to like more better materials used for water pipes or something like that, or how much power some particular communities can get. And a lot of times it's the same way we kind of treat zoning in a lot of situations, in terms of, oh, these people are different, and so they deserve, or this is how we'll treat them in terms of the infrastructure that's available to them. And whether that be education, and the idea of how a person is taxed and stuff like that. And these things like infrastructure, like people don't necessarily think about that, but that is also like how people communicate, and how really politics operates is really from an element of infrastructure. And we talked about in kind of our last video with mercenaries in the Renaissance, how society kind of grows out of a really kind of the same way the mafia acts to protect or says, hey, we'll protect you from any harm. A protection racket is this idea of one of the first things that springs out is an element of infrastructure. So you have the protection, but then you have the infrastructure that makes society, or it makes living in your protection more comfortable than other protections, or your protection live in a certain way. And it's something, because a lot of us, we don't think about things like how this is already kind of in the conversation in a lot of ways for a lot of people. We just don't quite realize it yet. And another case was where radio was thought to be infrastructure because of really the conversation of how radio transforms society in terms of where it plays, how it plays, where it's valuable, things like that. And that was very, very much there is a lot of ideas that can come behind the idea of communications and what communications are valuable to the populace. And this is I think they talked about in the city hall center there was a situation to where they had trucks come by and play radio during the heightened hours and stuff like that. And this is we really don't have an idea about infrastructure in this concept. I think this we could use a more solid idea about this about this concept of infrastructure, because it feels like developing the infrastructure to give people more power in a society is going to be tremendous, in terms of us being able to repair what we have here. Now this idea of really infrastructure and there's a lot to be said about this, and I'll probably I'll probably give away some of the thoughts behind what can happen here in terms of how this is really transforming an actual progression towards repairing a society in general. But it's definitely, when it comes down to infrastructure, this is absolutely everything behind the idea of that protection racket in general, right? So we have our soldiers or army or whatever, but that inside and that what we can do and what we do for our citizens, it really is important, and it certainly needs to be worked on. There's also an idea around how infrastructure is really how society removes the waste, and this idea is like people, you have workers in a society, and you want to kind of, somehow take this, make this infrastructure to where, it provides electricity or whatever, but it's to help, or the water, the electricity, and how it kind of helps alleviate moves of the waste. I can definitely see that analogy. I'm not 100% on that analogy, but I do see it and I do understand it. And like, what are we doing now, and how can we kind of better do that? Right now we do have the idea of, like, the looming threat of privatization. I think is something that is tremendous. Like, everybody thinks, oh, the corporations will do a good job, until it costs money to do that job, when the years before everything was okay. This is, it's pretty easy to see, like, when a corporation can treat you like a number, you will not like that. And that is, we're seeing that kind of in health. We're seeing that in healthcare, but I think the healthcare, but the idea of water and the electricity, and everything's fine now. Those guys seem like they do a really good job now. If things go wrong and they have to kind of go hat in hand to to some kind of, like, some kind of, what is it? Not a, why am I thinking about it? Not a donor, investor. They gotta go, when they gotta go hat in hand to an investor, they're going to, like, if you think that your water quality is going to be one of their main concerns, that is laughable. It's something that we really need to think about, and we really need to have a conversation about. Let's see. This idea of there's a word here, energo-political power, and of course, this is kind of what makes me really move against the idea of centralization, because that concentration of power, it could become dangerous when the people in power aren't necessarily people whom you agree with, and having, like, we talked about, really the idea of what is it called, and the Great Famine in China, and how they were able to, like, simply, like, they were able to deconstruct personal kitchens and kind of police the idea of saying, if you see smokestacks in the air, if you come across that, then you can essentially turn these people in. But the idea of a communal kitchen was sold to these people, and it gave a lot of power to these people, and you do not, those things can be tremendous. And in situations like that, this is, it can become very dark very fast. That's, and that right there is the infrastructures in the Renaissance, and when it comes down to the conversations and the way we think about things, I really hope that there is a lot of thought process, or that we can move into the future with this thought process of maybe adding another dimension to the element of the impact that infrastructure may have in an area. And also, you can please do the YouTube podcast stuff, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on podcast, or if you're on the podcast, subscribe, I guess. I don't even know. But if anything, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.